the new administration, I think there are messages to convey in terms of how we could improve efficiencies, interfaces between the agencies, what we should be keeping in the context of the somewhat successful reform. So we'll be covering, let's say, the usual areas when it comes to onshore fields, but with a sense of having this experience and message to convey in the context of this sort of rethinking of the energy sector that is currently taking place. So with that in hand and without taking much of your time in the introduction, as it was said, we have Javier Zambrano from Jaguar, we have Steve Hanson from International Frontier, we have Roberto from Cheiron, and we have Glyn from Petrofac. So with that, we have been working in 8 different themes. So when trying to address each of the themes, we will not be simply asking a plain question, but rather having a sort of a dialogue as to what's the experience of each of the companies in the context of each of those subjects. And the first one is addressed to Glyn from Petrofac. Petrofac has had an interesting experience so far in terms of the CIEPs, the migrations, a thorough participation in the Mexican upstream arena. And the first theme that we would like to cover is with respect to what we call technical innovation or logistical creativity. As you know, when addressing onshore fields, we do not only have the technical difficulties as usual, but of course logistical aspects to be taken into consideration. And that's really the purpose, so that Glyn can sort of elaborate and the rest of the team can sort of jump with additional ideas and comments. So please, Glyn.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Glyn Jones. I'm General Manager of Petrofac in Mexico. I just want to give you a little bit of context on who Petrofac is. We're one of the earlier entrants. We signed up for CIEP contracts in 2012 and 13. So we've been operating in Mexico for about 6 years. Currently, we're producing about 14,500 barrels a day, so one of the larger private producers. We have two fields in Tabasco and one offshore shallow water Enríquez. Today I'll focus on onshore, obviously, because this is the panel subject. And to give you some context about sort of logistics and the contracting community in Mexico, we've managed to spend about $1.2 billion since we entered in 2012. So I think, I want to give you context. We've had a lot of experiences, some good, some bad. And if I was talking about offshore, I'd probably be saying some different words. But onshore is complicated. I think many of you know that. But especially in the migrations, and we were the first company to achieve a migration from a CIEP to a PSC with Santuario in December last year. And presently we're advancing on the migration of our Magallanes and our Enríquez fields as well. So we're anticipating having 3 PSCs. With a PSC comes a field development plan, and that's actually the plan to invest usually many hundreds of millions of dollars into field rejuvenation, refurbishment, and secondary recovery. So my thoughts are, most of what we spent so far has been more in the OPEX and drilling domain. We're starting to move more into the CAPEX domain for facilities and expansion. So onshore is complicated. You've got land access issues, land ownership. Often you've got areas where there were no prior agreements. You've got to implement a royalty regime on that. You've got usually complicated syndicatal situations, formal, informal. You've got communities, many whom feel disadvantaged by the oil industry in the past and are looking for their share of the rent. You've got usually a smattering of crime and security issues. So really, any contractor that goes in that you use as an operator really has to understand local conditions. It's not easy to just appear and suddenly start operating in these areas. So we've had a lot of experience with local contractors who are adept at dealing with the onshore conditions And in many ways, offshore is simpler, much simpler. So we've got 6 years of history in this. So there are many capable local companies, as well as the international ones. But local content is clearly going to be, it's an issue now, and it's clearly an issue in the future. And our experience of local content is that we need to very much work with many of the Mexican companies. In Tabasco, we've got a lot of small companies. We have to work very, very hard with them on safety. Safety culture is not innate. It has to be worked on and developed, but you can get a good result. Quality, you have to move to a place where it's not just about the paperwork. We actually want the quality in the physical product. We've had a number of cases where we've had elaborate pre-award quality meetings, signed all the sheets off, and then when the goods are delivered to site, they're nothing like what you were promised, and that's an issue. That can delay you, that can cost you money. Financial is a real issue in the terms of many companies are still reeling from the era of the low oil price. And so we find that you've got to be very careful about your financial terms. So, lump sum, turnkey pay at the end, generally it just does not work. People don't have the working capital. They can't take that financial risk. So financials there. Project management sometimes needs some real attention, which actually limits Mexican companies in their ability to take more complex scopes, more functional scopes as opposed to discrete, deterministic, dictated scopes. So we're working, as a company, we work with a lot of Mexican suppliers to help local content. We're also participating in many of the industry initiatives, many sponsored by the ministries with the British Chamber of Commerce. But it's going to take time to really get the sort of service ability that we need to provide the services for major spend on FDPs. But it will. I think it's an initiative the industry should certainly really push for. I'm a native of the UK, and I've seen how that industry went from nothing to world-class companies. Worked in Norway, saw the same, and Malaysia. I've just come from there to run the business here, and similarly development programs. So I think it's something that needs to happen, but it's going to be very important for the future of the industry. And we use the word local content, but there's local content when we're talking about state, and there's sort of triple local content when you're talking about municipality and helping communities to get jobs. So there's a long way to go. The focus to date has been on the federal, national level. I think it needs to go down into more this Estado and the municipality type level. So anyway, some perspectives there to build on.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Glyn. We could probably jump into a touchy element in Mexico, which is security. As you know, there have been a number of approaches to the security issue in Mexico, from having a thorough analysis of your situation and having a security plan, and so on and so forth. So probably if Roberto could comment on the approach of your company as to security, and you have the type of measures and the planning in terms of security, and your feeling as to the situation and how Mexico is going, the trend that Mexico is taking in that theme.
Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Vengo representando al grupo Pico Cheiron. Es una empresa de capitales egipcios. Creo que somos los únicos presentes en el mercado de hidrocarburos acá en México. Desde hace 5 años que estamos presentes, primero con un CIEP, el CIEP de Altamira, que estamos basados en Tampico, y que estamos recorriendo ese largo y pedregoso camino para poder migrar a un contrato de producción compartida. Y también, hace poco tiempo atrás, en octubre del año pasado, ganamos la licitación llevada por la CNR y la CNH buscando un socio para Pemex en un farm out para los bloques de Cárdenas Mora. Operación que la iniciamos recién el 6 de marzo pasado. Mi participación en este panel, que aprovecho a agradecer a Oil and Gas de México por la invitación y poder participar con este grupo de distinguidos panelistas. Va a ser referente a mis vivencias. Es decir, yo llegué a México sin reforma energética, partimos con un CIEP, vamos camino a migrar y somos los primeros socios de PEMEX en campos en producción. Cosa que es fácil decirlo, pero no es muy fácil llevarlo a cabo. Ahora, sobre la pregunta específica que me hicieron sobre la seguridad. Hasta un tiempo atrás nosotros creíamos que teníamos cierta ventaja competitiva al estar operando, o comparativa al estar operando en el estado de Tamaulipas con el bloque de Altamira, que para mi sorpresa cuando llegué a México, primera vez que operamos un bloque solamente durante la luz del día. Cuando se esconde el sol, y hasta las 6 de la mañana, por razones obvias de seguridad, no podemos entrar a los campos, por lo cual acarrea un lote de problemas, es decir, roturas de líneas, derrame de estanques, todas esas cosas que pueden suceder. Entonces, eso nos llevó a tener un planteamiento, una estrategia de tener muy bien controlada nuestra producción y aceptar, no las reglas, pero la realidad que tenemos en Tamaulipas. Cosa que fue totalmente diferente cuando partimos en Tabasco. Indudablemente también tenemos que operar durante el día, por razones obvias, pero hay otro tipo de situación en esa área, que quizás seguramente muchos lo han escuchado, que cuando uno pide servicios a las empresas de servicios, cotizan con la cuota sindical o sin la cuota sindical. Y lo más entretenido y lo que más sorprende, que cuando paran alguna operación para que pueda entrar una empresa contratista, se hacen las negociaciones y hasta le dan un recibo de que uno pagó su cuota para poder entrar a trabajar. Ese es un tema, una realidad que existe, que nadie aparentemente lo ha podido controlar. Y la otra es el vandalismo. El vandalismo, que todo lo que huele a fierro y se puede cortar es capaz de ser convertido en plata rápidamente. Entonces, recibimos 40 pozos de parte de PEMEX para realizar nuestra operación, de los cuales hay 12 operando, pero los otros 28 hay que tratar de encontrar dónde está el árbol de Pascua, porque normalmente se han robado las válvulas, las líneas de producción, las líneas de bombeo neumático. Entonces, cualquier intervención que uno quiera hacer en un pozo tiene que empezar por rehabilitar la parte mecánica del pozo antes siquiera de pensar lo que hay en el subsuelo. Uno dirá, bueno, pero hay que tener seguridad. Sí, pero custodiar 200 kilómetros cuadrados o 180 kilómetros cuadrados es muy difícil en medio de un bosque lleno de cañas de azúcar, diríamos, en que es totalmente diferente a alguna operación que tenemos allá en Egipto, en el medio del desierto, que uno ve a una persona a kilómetros de distancia. Aquí es muy difícil. Lo que sí tuvimos que reforzar la seguridad en nuestras unidades, las plantas compresoras y las plantas de separación, para evitar que gente, poblados, entren y nos roben cosas como cable de cobre que es rápidamente convertido en plata, diríamos. Yo creo que es un issue tan importante para esta continuación de la reforma energética. Hay que buscarle una solución a la seguridad, pero yo creo que esa solución tiene que venir de los organismos gubernamentales. No pueden ser que las empresas privadas traten de custodiar algo en que venimos acá a entregar lo mejor nuestro y muchas veces no lo podemos hacer por estos temas de seguridad. Pero finalmente uno tiene que bailar con la música que le coloquen. Entonces, independiente de todos estos problemas, igual estamos operando, llevamos 5 años años operando en Altamira y recién partimos con nuestro primer farm out con Pemex y con los problemas típicos que existen, pero se superan. Con buena voluntad finalmente se superan.
Muchas gracias, Roberto. Probably for the rest of the fellow panelists, if you were to ask the next administration 2 or 3 specific tasks to take on board, from December the 1st, what would that be? Whomever wants to participate.
For security or for
security? Yeah.
Well, try to solve this problem that exists, and everybody knows that. Yeah. That is a main task. Because sometimes scared to some investors that want to come to Mexico because they hear a lot of things. But anyway, like I say, you can work, but it's difficult. And sometimes dangerous, but you can do it.
Sure, I mean, it's a huge problem. I wouldn't be as bold as to pinpoint what they should do. I don't know. I mean, first of all, I would say have them recognize that it's a huge issue, not only for our industry, but for the regions as a whole. So once they have the proper dimension of the problem, I guess they would be in a better position to undertake the task. And us as an industry can be very helpful doing that, understanding, because we work there, we have personnel on the ground, etc. So I guess our position should be to be helpful in any way we can, whether that is providing information or specific suggestions, etc. I think that's my 2 cents.
So that brings us to another rather complex and challenging theme, which is the social license. One of the elements that this new administration has been considering is really the relation with the social welfare between this sort of interaction between the oil and gas industry and the communities. Social license is something that has been in Mexico more thoroughly analyzed in the last 3 or 4 years. But I think it's going to be a real challenge in the context of this new administration to really improve the quality of living in the communities. And there is, of course, a very significant role of the oil and gas community, of the oil and gas sector in addressing those needs in the community. So there are many illustrations as to how companies are interfacing with the communities and taking into account that element of social license. So probably, Steve, if you can elaborate on that.
Sure, thank you, David. Yeah, my name is Steve Hanson. I'm president and CEO of International Frontier Resources. I'm also a director of Tonalli Energía. And I'll give you a little context. Coming from a small international company that is currently participating in the energy reform, we've been in Mexico for about 4 years. We were some of the first foreigners from Canada to come down here and evaluate the opportunity, and we were successful in being awarded a field in the 1.3 onshore bid round. We've gone through the regulatory process. We've been successful in achieving our licenses. We've now worked over our first well, and I believe we're the second company now to drill a well onshore in Mexico as part of the bid round. And we've just completed that well and are expecting production results in the next couple of weeks. So, as a small company, we've gone through all these various processes, starting from round 1.3 onshore and now to actually having production in the state of Veracruz. So that gives you the context that I can talk from. And when we came down here, what was really important to us is partnership. And we felt as an international company that we needed to have local boots on the ground. And we formed a JV with one of the leading petrochemical companies here in Mexico, Grupo Edesa, in August of 2015. This was well before we were awarded a block. And that 50-50 JV now operates under Tonalli Energía. So, from a country standpoint, my team has operated around the world. We've operated in the Middle East, in South America. My CEO is a Canadian, has worked in Ecuador for many years. We've worked in Asia, we've worked in Africa. So we've worked with foreign governments, we've worked with foreign contractors. We're used to working in that kind of a climate. But when you come to a new country, you need to get educated, and we continue to be educated as to how the local community works, the regulatory environment, how to operate and procure equipment and so forth. And so it's a constant learning position for us. From a local community perspective, now that we're operational and that in fact we've had success in the field, what was really key for us in the early days is to assess risk. And part of our bid round selection and part of our process was to understand and send out teams in advanced teams and understand local risk. So we assessed not just what was below ground, which is so critical in the oil and gas industry, but what are the above ground risks? Social, environmental, archaeological, security, all those risks were assessed very, very early on in the bid rounds. And then once we actually signed our license contract, we continued to put plans in place to understand issues that we may face. And part of our plan is to be prepared well in advance as we hit bumps in the road along the way, which we expected. And we have. We've had some challenges, certainly, as we've had successes in the field. And we've been very, very proactive with the local community in the early days. And Glyn talked about local content, and there is this perception that if you're an international company that you're going to come into Mexico and take jobs away. And that is not our experience. Our experience actually, in fact, is that we need to work with local contractors, small and large. We will be much more successful in creating jobs for local community, for Mexican people that have backgrounds in the oil and gas industry. So as a result today, with our small company, and we've drilled one well today, we indirectly and directly employ about 150 people. And our local content is currently around 65%. So the perception that an international company comes here and takes jobs is in fact incorrect. We are proud of the work we've done. We work very well here as a Canadian-Mexican joint venture. We work with the Alberta government and obviously the Mexican government. So from a social community standpoint, we need to be very, very proactive, and we need to continue to work with local people. Educating how international companies work is very important as well. And so not only do we as Canadians need to learn how things work in Mexico, to be successful, we want to train Mexican engineers and Mexican geologists and local people about how the international oil and gas communities work. So, we provide training as well for our Mexican crews about how international oil and gas work and how there's new techniques, whether it be recovery techniques, or procurement techniques to streamline and improve the processes that we can go through. So, there has to be a partnership and a collaboration here. And in my view, local government and state government needs to take a larger role in securing processes here. Such as landowners. It shouldn't be up to companies, in my view, to negotiate landowner agreements. It should be a partnership with state and local governments and the federal government to ensure that these don't take a long time. Landowner agreements take an exhausting and a long, long period of time. We should be, as a company, Mexican or Canadian, be able to go in and do the work we need to do. Okay, landowners should benefit extremely well with this royalty structure, but it shouldn't be holding up the business that is in place.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. And that brings my attention of national content. As you know, if we were to highlight sort of three aspects that have been sort of circulating in the context of the new administration, one of those is, of course, national content. And the potential view to higher the level that has been currently considered in the context of the CNH rounds, the farm outs and so on. And that's, of course, from my standpoint, a risky business. There are a number of considerations associated to the operatorship. I think Steve has already taken that into account. They have implemented a much higher level of national content as probably the applicable rule for them. So when we sort of make that disruption in terms of national content, we have complicated stories such as the one of Brazil, which was, from my perspective at least, very well, there was a good intention in having for Brazil a very high level of national content, but the outcome of having that national content at that level was really not what the Brazilian government was considering. There was a much higher level of corruption. All the facilities, the vessels, the FPSOs, the platforms, and so on were substantially delayed. There was lots of problems between the Federation of Brazil and the states of Brazil in terms of different taxes related to national content and so on. So making this sort of disruption in terms of national content when the oil and gas industry in Mexico has been doing its business plan, taking into account that level of national content, is probably not the best solution. I think it's much better to consider how the different operators, both onshore and offshore, are effectively addressing that national content and what could be the output or the benefit from that level of national content, rather than disrupting the procurement chain for the sector. So with that in mind, and this for Javier, environmental issues, especially in onshore blocks, and especially so for mature fields, has been an issue. Of course, there has been, we have historical fields, especially in southern Mexico, been with production for decades and decades, with different environmental problems. So the environmental baselines have been an issue, of course, not only with respect to the migration of CFs, the farm outs and the CNH rounds. It's really been an issue for every operator. Hundreds of wells, and in many occasions, not even PEMEX knows exactly where they are and the situation of those wells. So what has been your story in terms of environmental issues?
Sure, thank you, David. So yes, it is a huge task. It is a huge challenge, especially, as you mentioned, because sometimes the wells and the production lines and the facilities are not well mapped, and then you don't know what you have, and then you don't know where it is or if it's actually there. Having fields that have been producing for 50, 70 years, you have to be very, very thorough regarding the environmental baseline, and that takes a lot of focus, attention, and resources. The process is first understand what you have, then hire the proper professionals that know what they're doing in terms of surveying the land and the assets, and then documenting any findings regarding environmental damages or liabilities that you. The process is clear, but it is very burdensome. So I think it could be optimized a little in terms of having companies spend less time and money on things that they shouldn't be looking for. They should be working towards producing and taking care of the new operations, not so much of what has happened before. And it's tricky to talk about this because, well, the guidelines are there, and it's hard to have them change. And it is a reality, and from our standpoint, we've been taking care of that with hiring companies that will do the job for us. Going forward, I think the proper plans, QHC department is a very important thing in terms of dealing with ASEA or whoever takes over the responsibilities that currently are under ASEA. That's also burdensome. We understand where the delays come from. There's a lot of work for both sides, not just the companies, but also the regulators. They've done a tremendous job trying to keep up with so much work. However, and I think Stephen touched a little bit here on the delays that this print on the industry as a whole. It is quite a challenge to cope with these regulations and the time frame, the amount of time that it takes for companies like ours to get those permits in order is quite heavy and ineffective. So working towards that, it would be one of the main issues I say would help the industry to develop faster, more effectively.
Thanks, Javier. Glyn, the relationship between the lack of private infrastructure and the need to have PEP as a purchaser of your production is of course an issue for onshore operators. We might not have that level of private infrastructure in a few years now. I think we all dream to have a private operatorship of especially of primary midstream infrastructure, storage facilities, and so on. But the reality is that at the current stage we don't, and you have ongoing production, and you have to decide what to do with that production. And as of now, really the solution, if that's something to be regarded as a solution, is to sell it to PEP. So what's your feeling as to whether or not the type of netbacks that PEP is using for acquiring that production are okay, or what's your let's say your reaction as to this correlation between lack of infrastructure and need to sell to PEMEX?
You're looking at me, so I guess you want me to talk. All right. I mean, infrastructure is a big issue. If you're doing a migration to PSC, you're inheriting a lot of old infrastructure. Some of it you might have given to you as part of the PSC through the annexes. Some of it, and this is an area of discussion at the moment, might still be owned by PEMEX and leased back to you. So if I sort of go through the value chain, if I may, I mean, the first thing is just to be sure that the infrastructure that you're in charge of is fit for purpose. It's often been neglected, so you need to invest in it to understand what you've got, and often you don't. That's back to sometimes the environmental baseline surveys. But then to bring it up to the appropriate standards of your own company and the regulators. The battery is an interesting one because you may operate them, you don't own them, but you may need to put money into them. You know, and also to be sure that you've got stuff like fiscal metering and that you've got the right sort of control that you need in a more open system. That you have got the right measurement protocols, and what we inherited was very informal. Shall I put it informal? But when you migrate to PSC, you better get that right. I mentioned earlier that we were looking at FDPs. Well, with FDPs comes a production increase. So the off-takes are an area that we are focusing on. You often find that you've got constraints in gas off-take. It's not well developed. You may have constraints in oil, but also you're looking to make sure that your infrastructure, if you're going to make investment decisions for the next 20 or 25 years, you want to know that you've got secure off-take. But we experience pipelines that are down-rated because of corrosion. And other problems like that. So you have an issue because of the, let me call it, the lack of money available, if there's going to be an upgrade in capacity or actually a refurbishment of an existing infrastructure system, how's that going to be funded? And I think we're going to have to find ways of developing that further, you know, in terms of how do we fund major offtake infrastructure upgrades. And then, of course, back to your sort of last point is, the sales industry is opening up. We had the Transfigura for the state share. So it is slowly but surely opening up, but it's going to take time simply because of the infrastructure. Where do you store it? Where do you lift it from? But we're looking at that. And clearly we would rather have an open market with multiple bidders where we could sell our equity share of hydrocarbons on that basis. Gas, I think, will always be a little bit more difficult because it's much more captive. but oil, we certainly hope it would go that way. So that's a very, very quick run through the value chain.
Absolutely. Thanks, Glyn. Roberto, un tema que me gustaría que entráramos es, sobre todo en este, digamos, momento del año, de cara a una nueva administración, y tiene que ver con el diseño institucional de la reforma energética y las eficiencias, la optimización que puede haber entre la relación entre las distintas entidades, los puntos de vinculación, entre la CRE y la CNH, entre ASEA, desde luego, el Fondo Mexicano del Petróleo, digamos, la arquitectura institucional. Y antes de eso me gustaría hacer una pequeña reflexión, me gustaría saber el punto de vista no solamente de Roberto, sino de quien guste participar, y tiene que ver con una institución muy relevante, independientemente de cómo le nombremos en un potencial cambio, que es los temas que es ASEA, los temas de ambiente y seguridad industrial. Y los comentábamos antes, y tomando en cuenta que estos paneles, estas discusiones son libres y se vale desde luego tener el punto de vista de la audiencia, de nosotros, hay una preocupación que al menos yo tengo y creo que algunos compartimos, y es la importancia de mantener a una agencia desde luego con un cierto nivel de autonomía, pero que no caigamos en lo que otros países han caído en la tentación y han tenido pues francos desastres, como el caso de Macondo, en donde los temas de seguridad industrial y ambiente son unificados con los temas propiamente de carácter económico, tratando de unificar, en el caso mexicano, los roles de ASEA con los roles de CNH. Me parece que las investigaciones, los análisis que hubieron después de Macondo dieron lugar a la necesidad, no solamente en Estados Unidos, sino en cualquier lugar del mundo, de diferenciar claramente los temas de seguridad industrial y ambiente de los temas económicos de uno y otro regulador, porque cuando los unimos, las decisiones económicas suelen primar sobre decisiones tan relevantes que deberían ser las primeras, las de seguridad industrial y ambiente. Y también es muy necesario, desde mi punto de vista, evitar la tentación por un tema tal vez de ahorro presupuestal o lo que sea, de eliminar una agencia tan importante como la ASEA y llevar las atribuciones de la ASEA en una dispersión normativa entre la Semarnat, SEDATU, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Me parece que la importancia de mantener una agencia, mejorar sus capacidades, su presupuesto, tripularla correctamente con el nivel de especialistas, etcétera, es importante. Pero bueno, es una pequeña reflexión, y tal vez, Roberto, si nos pudieras compartir a partir de tu experiencia de estos años sobre lo que tú piensas del diseño institucional en México para el sector de hidrocarburos y cómo lo podríamos optimizar de cara a la nueva administración.
A ver, antes de contestar tu pregunta, me voy a referir sobre el tema de la seguridad industrial, el medio ambiente y las comunidades. Nuestro lema referente a eso es que nuestra producción tiene que ser segura, limpia y eficiente, en ese orden, no en ningún otro orden, segura, limpia y eficiente. Por lo tanto, le damos la máxima importancia, y como escuchaba esta mañana alguien, la persona que sale a trabajar tiene que volver a su casa de la misma manera en que se fue, totalmente sano y salvo. En los temas ambientales y sociales, yo creo que es de suma importancia cuando uno toma un bloque, se hace cargo de un bloque, sea un CIEP, sea un farm out, sea lo que sea, hacer un estudio social para poder medir en qué forma uno recibe ese bloque, quiénes son las comunidades, qué es lo que hacen. Desde un punto de vista personal, creo que no hay proyecto más eficiente y de mayor rentabilidad en el mundo desde el punto de vista social que la salud y la educación. Es por eso que en esos temas nos hemos enfrescado tanto en Altamira como lo vamos a hacer también en Cárdenas, Mora. Y creo que además estos temas son muy bien recibidos por la comunidad. Yo entiendo que de repente uno se está metiendo en lo que no le corresponde, que es la función del Estado, la salud, la educación. Pero cuando ven sus bloques pequeñas comunidades con colegios o sin colegios, sin escuelas, sin baños, es que realmente uno piensa que puede contribuir. Y si uno se está metiendo en el patio de estos vecinos, algo tiene que hacer, diríamos, para compensarlos. Ahora, volviendo al tema de las instituciones que rigen la reforma energética, creo que indudablemente cuando Pemex en algún momento produjo 3.4 millones de barriles y ahora está en 1.9, cuando importaba el 16% de sus productos limpios y ahora importa el 64% de sus productos limpios, algo había que hacer. Y se realizó la reforma energética, a algunos les gustarán, a otros no, pero no se podía quedar México mirando por la ventana cómo iba disminuyendo su producción y su capacidad de refinación. Indudablemente, yo creo que todas estas, o por lo menos creo que todas en que nos ha tocado participar en las licitaciones, han sido hechas con total transparencia. Total transparencia. Realmente hemos participado en 3 o 4 y es increíble, diríamos, la acuiciosidad con que lo realiza la CNER y la CNH. Ahora, también todas estas empresas que fueron, no sé si creadas, pero para controlar la reforma energética, llámese CNH, llámese ASEA, llámese Fondo Mexicano del Petróleo, están demasiado celosas de su función. Y como decía esta mañana, creo que la representante de Statoil tiene a geólogos haciendo informes para poder responder a todas las situaciones y a todas las consultas que se hacen. Dicen que en los farm-out hay que llenar alrededor de 400 informes al año. Recién llevamos 3 meses, pero pareciera que tienen razón. Claro que se crea un nicho para que algunas otras empresas crean sistemas de software para automatizar este sistema. Pero finalmente uno tiene gente dedicada a hacer informes de todo tipo. Creo que hay una inocente frase en las licitaciones que dice, no solamente en las bases de licitación, también en el contrato y en los acuerdos de operación conjunta, tendrá que cumplir con todas las leyes y reglamentos vigentes. Puesta ahí esa frase, inocente. Pero cuando uno toma nota de lo que significa, tiene que tener un ejército de abogados para que se conozcan todas las leyes y reglamentos que tienen relación con hidrocarburos y todas estas agencias. Por ejemplo, muchos de ustedes habrán escuchado de una palabra que está de moda, por lo menos entre los operadores, el SASISOPA, Sistema de Administración de Seguridad Industrial, Salud Ocupacional y Protección Ambiental. Claro, el sistema de administración tiene que ser el sistema que dijo la ASEA que tienen que tener todos, que son lineamientos, 34 páginas de lineamientos que hay que seguirlo al pie de la letra. Cuando nosotros postulamos a ser operadores y a participar en una licitación, se nos midió con lupa si teníamos sistema de administración, si estábamos legalmente constituidos, si teníamos la capacidad financiera, etcétera, etcétera. Yo creo que se debiera creer más en las empresas que vienen de afuera o las empresas que también están en México, porque ¿qué empresa no tiene un sistema de administración? Y tiene que demostrarlo, pero no tendríamos que todas tener el mismo y cumplir con todo lo que la CEA en este momento está solicitando. En el caso de la CNH, y haciendo un poco, recordándole lo que le comenté en la mañana, hay 2 cosas que a mi modo de ver podrían cambiarse. Primero, cuando uno asigna al cuarto de datos para informarse y poder hacer una propuesta, la hace y 8 o 10 meses después recién toma el campo. Pero en ese intertanto sucedieron muchas cosas. Pero la información ya no es de tu socio, que es PEMEX en el caso de Farm Out, es de la CNH. Entonces, para pedirle información de lo último que sucedió en ese año, uno va a la CNH se lo pide a PEMEX se lo devuelve a la CNH y la CNH me lo da a mí. Pasan 4 o 5 meses en todos estos trámites. Creo que eso se debiera mejorar. Yo sé que la CNH tiene que tener el control de la información, pero si PEMEX es tu socio, tendría que tener poder entregarte la información directamente sujeto a los acuerdos de confidencialidad que tiene. Lo otro es las visitas a terreno para poder postular a un bloque. Nos tocó en una que nos subieron, yo no estaba, arriba de un camión militar, dijeron, esa es la batería y ese es un pozo típico. Esa toda la batería, la visita a terreno. Entonces nadie se puede formar una clara visión de a lo que está postulando. Y después, cuando recibe el campo, se encuentra lo que comentaba en la mañana, vandalismo. Pero en general, yo creo que son cosas que hay que mejorar. Pero lo que sí, y vuelvo a insistir, México no se podía quedar mirando por la ventana, viendo lo que estaba sucediendo, que iba en una debacle en la producción y en la refinación.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Steve, probably before we go into a couple of really interesting questions by the audience, I think it's fair to have your perspective as to what's your recommendation for international investors in terms of soft landing in Mexico. What has been your experience and the messages that you will convey for soft landing in Mexico?
Interesting question, David. Thank you. We talk a bit about from the Canadian perspective again. Again, there's a very large energy investment community in Canada. Hundreds of investors, whether it be institutions or analysts or bankers that have invested around the world. Many have invested in Colombia over the last decade or longer, East Africa and other regions of the world. So as Canadians, investors are used to investing in foreign regions. If you look at Mexico's mining industry, there's about 140 Mexican mining companies that are listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange that have assets in Mexico. So there's a long history of investment coming out of Canada into the Mexican mining sector. So we see some similarities taking place in the energy space. As we've come out of this downturn, we're certainly seeing greater interest out of bankers out of Toronto and out of Calgary who are taking a close look at Mexico. But the key factors to attract capital, and that's for Mexican companies to attract capital or foreign companies to invest in Mexico, is to keep these barriers of entry low. And it's really important that Mexico, to compete with the global energy market, is to have incentives and to have attractive, transparent regulatory framework that will allow companies to say, listen, I can make more money in Mexico than I can in another country somewhere else. So there needs to be a regime, a fiscal regime that incentivizes companies to deploy capital. And that goes for midstream and downstream opportunities as well as upstream. But I think we're seeing a turn. We're seeing more interest out of Canada in Mexico. I think there's been some hesitancy, certainly around this election. It's a bit of a waiting game now as to what's going to take place. But underground, Canadians view Mexico as being fantastic. Under the ground, the assets here are world class. It's the above ground risk that really is the question mark. And so, I think that Canada will continue to be a place where capital can be raised. And certainly that's our belief, as a small company in Canada.
Great, thanks, Steve. A couple of very interesting questions from the audience. Probably the first one for Javier. And it's from Miguel Fonseca, a director in Capgemini. And it's quite direct and interesting, and I think it applies for to all of you. and it's going to be in a short period of time. And I read it as it is. Is the operators' ecosystem ready for rigid audit process announced by the new administration?
Sure. Interesting question. The short answer is yes. And this derives from the many regulations in place and the tons of paperwork that we have to comply with. There's a lot of requisites for us to be able to operate, a lot of permits that we have to comply with and submit to the authorities. So having said that, we're also required to document all of that. So yes, we're ready for audits. It will definitely, I think, impact the way we operate, because we're going to have to take a step back and deal with whatever requirements are made on top of everything else. And I applaud all the comments Roberto made. It's quite the challenge to deal with all of the paperwork and all of the permits, etc. And that's scary and that's not efficient. It needs to evolve toward international standards so Mexico can be more competitive internationally for investors and operators. However, in the 3 or 4 years that the reform has grown and evolved, I think that a lot of steps have been taken in the right direction. We're still far away from that, but I do want to say this. We see the willingness from the regulators to grow towards more efficient processes. And I think that needs to keep going for the country and for the industry in Mexico to reach those standards and reach a scale that is beneficial for the whole country. So yes, we're ready for the audits. Hopefully they won't take a toll on the operator, on the operations day to day, the administration day to day. To some extent it will, we know that, but yeah, it's a reality. So
Great, thanks. Glyn, I guess we have time for last question. It's a very good one from Pablo Guzman from PwC, and it's as follows. Some of you have E&P contracts in consortium with PEMEX. What recommendations would you give to PEMEX in order to become a better partner?
Yeah, you're looking at me again. No, I mean, I think PEMEX is undergoing massive cultural change at the moment. It has many, many very good people, but it's on a, you know, we are in a PSC, we have PEMEX as a non-operating partner, and it was a very interesting experience, because when you migrate from a CIEP to a PSC, one day you're a contractor, so you go to them. The next day you're the PSC operator, they come to you, and they're not used to that. So there's many sort of symbolic things that are important in developing that new relationship. We're doing well on Santuario, but there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. And I must be honest that the bureaucracy that sometimes is strangling in PEMEX is struggling to keep up with the role of being a PSC non-operator. And we're having to find in many cases that the processes don't exist in PEMEX for doing many of the things, especially around money flows. So we're having to help with that a lot. But I think we're getting there, but it is a massive cultural change. But over time, I've been here nearly 2 years, we pioneered the migration process. We set the sort of basic process for others, and I think it's getting better. It's getting better. And I hope that we see that trend continuing.
Thanks so much, Glyn.
Si me permites,
Por favor.
Como ustedes saben, nosotros tenemos este farm out con Pemex. Yo les voy a explicar una teoría que yo tengo de los 3 sombreros. Por un lado, Pemex es mi socio. Nosotros somos operadores, 50-50, que está muy bien. Segundo, la misma gente que es mi socio, que se sienta conmigo en la misma mesa, en los comités operativos, también pertenece al activo y a la subdirección de Pemex del área. Segundo sombrero. Y el tercer sombrero es que en los primeros 180 días la CNH por sí misma o nombrando a un tercero acompañará a este consorcio para que siga avanzando. Y ese tercero, los ojos de la CNH, es el administrador de Pemex del área. Entonces, cuando me siento a conversar con ellos, tengo que mirar con cuál sombrero está, digamos. Yo creo que eso es una de las cosas que hay que mejorar. Creo que en este momento, porque la CNH no tiene gente para controlar, tiene que usar a alguien que sepa de petróleo. Y por supuesto, los que saben de petróleo en este momento, los que han estado todo el tiempo es Pemex. Pero es un tema que hay que mejorar. Que indudablemente hay muy buena voluntad, hemos avanzado sin mucho, pero también hay que pensar que estos son 25 años y llevamos recién 3 meses en que estamos en la luna de miel. Hay que ver cómo se desarrolla este matrimonio en adelante.
Muchas gracias, Roberto. Antes de finalizar y agradeciendo a mis compañeros panelistas, una reflexión muy breve en 30 segundos. Me parece que estamos en un momento en el que debemos ser muy claros en los mensajes a dar al sector gubernamental, en el sentido de que si bien hay eficiencias a realizarse en el entorno del diseño institucional, etcétera, debemos, creo yo, de comunicar las buenas noticias. Creo que tenemos que ser positivos en cuanto a cómo la comunidad internacional, no solamente el empresariado mexicano y las organizaciones mexicanas, han visto la implementación de la reforma y este ecosistema engrandecido en México con el número de operadores que hoy en día tenemos, y no solamente de operadores, sino de empresas relacionadas a estos operadores. Me parece que hay un tema de comunicación, no solamente del gobierno actual, de los reguladores actuales, sino también de nosotros mismos, de comunicar las buenas noticias en cuanto a cómo se han venido haciendo las cosas a partir de la entrada de esta comunidad de operadores. Y también tenemos una obligación de hacer ver las cosas que deben de mejorarse en cuanto al diseño institucional, las eficiencias, las interfaces, etc. Y con eso no me queda más que agradecer a mis compañeros panelistas y a los organizadores y sobre todo a ustedes. Muchas gracias y buenos días.